But tonight, the Cowboys go for 11 straight wins when they travel north to Minnesota. After the game, America's team will have a nice 10-day break before they face the division rival Giants next Sunday. I also want to mention Mike Zimmer will not be coaching tonight. He just had eye surgery. Mark Schler is still with us, but I'm going to start with Stephen A. on this one. Stephen A., how much of an advantage is this for Dallas, having that 10-day rest, so to speak?
I don't think it's much of an advantage. I mean, listen, the Dallas Cowboys, whether they had the rest or not, I just think their offensive line is so massive. They're so accustomed to beating people up that it's really not going to matter. I guess you could say it gives them an advantage because rested, they'll have more fresh legs to just steamroll over the Minnesota's defensive line. And, you know, that's the best thing that you can say. Ultimately, it doesn't come down to much to me. I don't see Minnesota as being much of a threat because I don't see their offense as much of a threat. I think the defense can keep things interesting for a while, but ultimately if you give Dallas's offense with that offensive line enough opportunities, those big beefy boys up front are simply going to wear you down. That's just the way it is.
Well, here's the deal. All right, they're going to play Minnesota tonight. Mm-hmm. And Minnesota has the #1 ranked defense from an efficiency standpoint. I don't think it really matters. Then they'll have that break before they play what? Your Giants, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Now, normally I would look at that break when it comes to offensive football, and I would say that's a disadvantage. Because offensive football, especially in this day and age, is all about rhythm. And that can get you out of a rhythm, especially throwing the ball. But not the Dallas Cowboys, because they'll create their own rhythm. Stephen A. is 100% right. Man, they will line up and they will play smash mouth. They are so multiple in their running game. They'll run zone. They'll run power. They'll run counter. They'll run ISO. You name it. Jason Witten doesn't get the credit that he deserves as one of the great players in this league because he'll line up on the backside, be a cutoff guy. On the front side, be a lead blocker, in line as a tight end. Motion in the backfield, be a lead blocker on a linebacker. The guy's a great player. So then you add the wrinkle of a Dak Prescott in the red zone, running the zone read stuff with him on the edge. They're a team that creates their own rhythm because they bludgeon you at the point of attack. And so when you can do that, it's amazing what it opens up for you as a quarterback throwing the football. I would say usually that kind of break becomes a bit of a disadvantage. It gets you out of your rhythm, but not for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh,
what do you know about offensive play,
Yeah.
Mark Schlereth? Take it from me. You know how much Madden I've played in my life?
Okay.
Nonsense. Let me tell you something. Not only is this a huge advantage for the Dallas Cowboys this time of year, of course timing is a big issue, but they're a run-heavy offense.
Right.
How much timing? It's not like pass-happy. It's offensive line.
That's why I said it's...
So they get not only 10 days going into the Giants game. Mm-hmm. And I put the camera on. Okay, good. I'm going to pull a Stephen A. Smith. And let me tell you something, schedule makers in the NFL. The Giants on consecutive weeks? That's right, I'm hijacking this and making this about the Giants. Have to play the Steelers on 10 days rest and then the Cowboys on 10 days rest? What's going on? That is especially this time of year, football is basically an ongoing traffic accident. It's an injury. Right. And this time of year, those extra 3 days of rest, Mark, what does that mean for you as a player who's banging up against guys all week? 3 days extra rest late in the season.
Huge. That's huge, especially for those guys who are banged up and beat up. And a guy like me that oftentimes come Thursday or Friday, I was still limping around trying to get ready for Sunday, to give me those extra days, that is huge. So
you admit the league is lining up against my New York Football Giants?
The league, yeah, I will admit that hindsight being 2020, if the schedule makers actually really looked at this going, that's a real disadvantage. But listen, man, the schedule is littered with disadvantages like this. When they make it, they have all kinds of these games that just aren't right. But the bottom line is you got to line up and play the ones that are on your schedule.
Pittsburgh at Pittsburgh on 10 days rest, and then you get the best team in football maybe, and they get another 10 days. What? Why? All right, anyway, I'm over that. I just needed to say
the Giants.
They don't like the Giants. They're trying to keep Eli down.
Do not like the Giants.
Giants, any shot at winning that one?
Oh, you always have a shot. I mean,
Big shot?
With Eli, right?
You always have a shot with Eli to win games.
Thank you.
I mean, and it's in New York, and Eli has been really good in New York. Odell Beckham Jr. has been great. Their passing game has been great. They've played much better on the defensive side of the ball here down the stretch. And oh, by the way, quietly, 8-3, one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the league. If you look at power rankings right now, they've quietly amassed an 8-3 record, kind of under the radar, if you will.
Oh, so yeah, please, great football gods, I will sacrifice another 2 seasons of the Knicks if you just let the Giants somehow win a Super Bowl this year.
Oh, that was funny.
That's not even that. You know what? Sacrificing another 2 years of the Knicks. Come on. I mean, how much
more?
Yeah, I mean, come on. You've already sacrificed.
I'm not giving up any more Yankees seasons.
Okay,
it's enough already.
All right.
Mark, thank you so much.
Got it.
Good to see you. Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy has done extensive legwork in the promoting of hiring of minority coaching candidates, and he spoke on the state of coaching at a luncheon promoting NBC's partnership with Thursday Night Football, saying, quote, "So many owners don't know what they're looking for. I've talked to people who have said, recommend a coach to me. And when I say, well, what are you looking for? They say, well, I don't know. Recommend someone who is good." Very interesting. We welcome in Bill Poley into the show. Spent 7 years, of course, with Tony Dungy. Yes, won a Super Bowl together. Thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. Help us out here. Do you think this is a reason why there's so few minority head coaches in the NFL?
No, it's one of the reasons. There's a number of reasons. On the one hand, Tony's exactly right. Owners don't know what they're looking for. On the other hand, you have agents out there who are pushing coaches and getting in league with people in the media trying to push coaches who may not even fit or even be qualified. Third, you have all kinds of speculation that takes place. The internet, for example, had a story a couple of weeks ago that Josh McDaniels was not on the list compiled by a committee that I belong to. First of all, the list hasn't been promulgated, and Josh McDaniels was on it. So it's that kind of nonsense that floats around that owners and club presidents are susceptible to. The other thing is that there is the feeling, largely I think created by the media, that you have to be a coordinator in order to be qualified to be a head coach. That's not true. In fact, there have been many head coaches, including my mentor, Marv Levy, who was not a coordinator, and good ones. So there are a number of things that are taken into consideration. Fortunately, this year we have a number of, not a great number, but a number of really good minority coaches who may be available to fill needs. But in the end, it's the owner and the people around him who make the decision. And oftentimes the football people don't have the loudest voice in the room, which is, in my opinion, a mistake.
I think it does have something to do with it for a very kind of stupid reason. And this happened, sports you would think would be run much more efficiently. But for years we see that wasn't the case. How slow was baseball to accept analytics, and now every single team relies on them heavily because they work. The early adopters of analytics and who employed them enjoyed great success and a huge advantage until the slow ones caught on, right? So it's not always run efficiently. And one of the ways I think sports is inefficient, particularly the NFL, is that people cast in their minds. So if the owners don't know what they're looking for, they cast. I want a guy, that coach is good. I want someone who reminds me of him. Go get me someone who reminds me of him. And sometimes it's as simple as that's the way they look. I really think that plays into it. They remind him of a guy who just had success. And only recently do you hear things like, hey, you know who Jameis Winston reminds me of? Ben Roethlisberger, right? Mm-hmm. And not just when you saw an African-American quarterback, another African-American quarterback, because the casting people do in their minds often is simply the way they look, and what people see oftentimes is race. So I think it's going to be an ongoing and slow process, gradual process, but the more minority, quote unquote, candidates you see and coaches you see in the league, I think that will have a kind of ripple effect in increasing the speed at which this stuff happens.
Well, I want to chime in here by first saying that, I've, for years, Max Molly, y'all may not know this, but ever since this man, Bill Polian, has been working here, it's been a treasure for me, because every time I'm around him, he teaches me more and more about the game of football, and I've always appreciated that about him, and I want to thank you for being on the show. The thing that I love when I talk to Bill Polian is that, like many, I have preconceived notions. When I think about the paucity of African Americans that happen to be coaching in the sport of professional football, I hearken back to a quote that was attributed to Bill Walsh years ago in terms of the need for individuals to ingratiate themselves with us so we can get to know them better and things of that nature. When I talk to a Bill Polian, I'm talking to somebody that I view as an executive and as a teacher who is knowledgeable about his profession and knows what's needed. Bill, I don't know if we can necessarily get that from a lot of guys that are or have been in your positions or are in your positions. It seems to me like there's this penchant to bring people on board either that they're personally comfortable with or that they believe the owners would be comfortable with. How much credence do you give to that thinking, if any at all?
Well, there's some to it. You know, there's a lot of truth to all of these statements. I don't, by the way, think people necessarily cast for race, for or against. The bottom line is that there are usually more than one person involved in a decision. It's rare when it's only one person. George Young had that, I had that in Indianapolis, but it's rare. So you get people who really don't understand what the game on the field is all about and have perhaps marketing concerns, have perhaps image concerns, have perhaps preconceived notions based on what they read or hear in the media. And they bring them into the mix and into the interview process things that really are extraneous. And oftentimes you don't get to the important stuff. Mm-hmm. And so two things have to happen, in my opinion. You're not going to change the makeup of who makes the decision. That's the owner's call. But we need to do a better job, as Bill Walsh did with the original Stanford project many, many years ago. Yes. We need to get minority coaches prepared for the interviews. That's the first thing we need to do. And that the committee on which I serve is working on that. We need to get them prepared for the interviews so they know that they have to present staff and they have to present good and solid staffs, that they know they have to, what questions they have to answer. They know they have to talk about the style of football they want. They know they have to set the vision for how they want the
Why don't they know
play.
That now, do you think?
Well, because assistant coaches and coordinators don't think that way. They're not in that mode. They're getting a game plan ready. They're not thinking about what my staff is going to be, so we got to help them do that.
Why is it that the white candidates don't need that same help?
They do.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone
sure.
across
Absolutely,
the
they
board.
do. Everyone across the board.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
White candidates interview just as poorly as black candidates or.
So in other words,
Hispanic.
because there are fewer minority candidates to begin with who are getting the opportunity,
That's the second
it's
part
even
of it.
more important that they are fully prepped for the opportunity.
That's the second part of it. We don't have enough minority quarterback coaches. We don't have enough minority coordinators. That's the second part of the puzzle. Right. And when we get that, and we're working toward it,
Bill,
we're trying to get the pipeline full.
How concerning is
what
it?
resistance? I'm sorry. I wanted to know what resistance do you believe actually exists to that happening? What you just said about getting more minority quarterback coaches, more minority coordinators, etc. What's the impediment in that regard?
Number one, the growth process. They got to start at the college level. That's where most coaches start. Secondly, we got to get more quality control people on the offensive side of the ball who are minorities. That's where they start. Fill the pipeline, and at the other end, candidates will emerge.
So is it fair for somebody like me to look at the paucity of African American coaches in the sport of college football, particularly on a D1 level, and say that is contributing to the lack of black coaches on the NFL level? You're not getting
to some
them.
degree, that's true.
You're not addressing that issue in college.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you feel that the Rooney Rule was the kind of necessary first step in order for this pipeline issue to even be an issue? In other words, first you need to make sure that minority candidates are even looked at, or has this been done backwards?
No, without question, the Rooney Rule was the most significant advancement in sports. Forget about just football, in sports for minorities. And it's been followed and replicated by other sports. Commissioner Tagliabue should be in the Hall of Fame for that alone. That alone. Yeah. So we had to have that. Now we got to grow the pipeline. That's really what it's all about.
The next step.
The next step. Yes.
No question.
Well,
but regardless of race, I find it concerning that owners don't know what they want in itself. What were you going to say, Stephen A?
No, I was saying that in corporate America, what you have is a situation where it's mandated that there's a certain number of African Americans in particular professions that get accorded opportunities. I'm glad the Rooney Rule is in place. Please don't get me wrong. But I'm saying that the mandate that exists in corporate America, that doesn't seem applicable with the NFL as it pertains to the Rooney Rule. Do you have any issue with that whatsoever, Bill?
I think the Rooney Rule is great. It's been expanded to general managers, and it's been expanded to other front office positions, including for women. And I think that's the precursor to everything else. Once that's in place, and it is in place and has been for a long time, then we begin to take steps to make sure that the pipeline is full. It's not right now, to be very honest with you. It's not.
Really appreciate you joining us and your insight on this.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Bill.
We'll argue about the MVP some other time.
Yes.